Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2024 week 45. That's November 4th to November 10th, and we are working on some brake lines. So I've gotten my new bender in the mail, and we can actually start working on getting some brake lines bent up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the old brake line that I had running in the car from the front to the back, and I'm just going to use it to do some test bends, figure out how the bender works, and kind of get some ballpark idea as to what I'm doing before I get started. There's also instructions in here. They kind of give you, if you're doing a 45-degree measure here, measure your drop, multiply the distance by X number, and that's where your second mark is going to be. You do your bend there, and that'll give you your offset. So it's really good information, but it's very it's hard. They give you like the marks for like a 90-degree bend or a 45, but I ended up doing like 70-degree bends, and so it's not an exact science at that point. So that's why I'm using the test piece. I think it's just the smarter way to go about it. So I'm gonna start off and do some initial bends on this first piece, and let's just get right into this. So on this first bend here, I'm doing 45s, and I think I got like a 5.5 inch drop. So it ends up being that the distance between the bends, I think it ends up being 7 and some odd inches. So kind of holding this up on the diff, and I'm just not liking the way it looks. It's very long and drawn out, and I was hoping it to land a little bit closer to where the tube meets the housing. So yeah, so as I said, that's 45-degree bend if I recall correctly, and I actually end up going to like 70-degree to get where I want to be. So I also remember, before I get too far, I think the original diff breather goes through the distribution block. Got a visit from Carbureator. That's my boy. He's gonna stay in the shop with us for a little tiny bit here until I don't know why he doesn't love staying in the shop, but he's gonna stay with us for a little bit. So as I said, I'm looking for the diff breather that I bought, because if I recall correctly, the original goes through the distribution block and then into the housing, and that's what holds the distribution block. Mine's just up on a bracket that I made. So I'm just gonna find that diff breather and see if I can use it to move the distribution block. But I want to know if I can even use the breather that I got. So I'm just looking for it. I'm looking on the bench. I remember it came in this tiny little package. I think it's a white package, so I'm looking on the bench. I thought I just left it up on the bench. I already looked in the original Summit Racing box that it would have come in. So yeah, I'm just looking for this diff breather. It's right around here. I'm looking under the car, and I finally found it. Just this tiny little brown package, not white, but I found it. So find the diff breather. I can take it out of the package, and this thing's just tiny. It really does not, it'll thread in like it's supposed to, but all it's going to do is be a diff breather. It can't hold that distribution block, so that distribution block's going to stay exactly where it is. I don't need to worry about that, and I can, go through and build these lines. So since we know we need more than 45, we can actually start bending the first line. So what I'm doing is just tossing a little bit of grease on the bender just to help it, because it's stainless steel. Just throw a little bit of grease on the bender, and that'll just help it out a little bit. And right here, I catastrophically fucked up. So you'll notice that and I've just realized that the fitting wasn't at the end of the tube. So that means that piece of stainless is absolutely fucked. I'm not going to be able to use that because there's no fitting at the end of it, and fitting can't, get around that bend. So it is what it is. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue on using that piece to make a template for the next or for the next piece that I cut and bend to final shape. But this will be great practice. I've never used this bender before. So understanding how it works, how everything's going to line up, and just getting some test bends in here and getting, to be at least a little bit confident that what I'm doing, in theory will work. That's not a bad thing. So yeah, so what I'm doing is so I got the first bend kind of in there, and that's fine. And then I need to kick this up off of the diff to go into the fitting there that's on the bracket. So I've marked on the tube like what angle it needs to be bent up at, and I'm going to do a 45. So I'm doing the calculations for it. So just going to go ahead and quickly get this bend done and hopefully get it done correctly. As you can see, like, this isn't exactly a straight bend because it's going at a completely different angle. So it's fairly complex in what I need it to do. Yeah, obviously this is too long right now, which is why it doesn't look like it's sitting flat, but man, I am pretty happy with how that's come out so far. Really can't complain about it. It's looking pretty nice. And doing this test piece gave me some really, really good information. So namely, what I want to do is that bend that I just did, I actually want it to happen earlier in the line. And the reason why I want it to happen earlier in the line is I need to be able to get a fitting on the end and get the line in my machine that does the ends. And so I just need some more room to get that done. So what I'm going to do now is, I don't know if I showed that little machine I got on the bench before, but that machine on the bench is a tubing straightener, so I can straighten out my stainless steel tubing. Really super handy to have. I think I did because I think I would have used it to straighten out the first piece of tubing that I just fucked up. So yeah, really nice to have that tool, especially when stainless comes in rolls and it's kind of hard to work with. I'm going to look at getting a better cutter because using that cutter was just painful. I mean, it worked, but if I'm going to do more lines, I want to get something a little bit better, and we'll cut stainless a little bit easier. So yeah, just going to straighten this out, and then I'm just going to bend up the second one based off of my initial template, and then I'll, I don't screw up this piece. I, pull my head out of my ass and, actually put the end on and then bend it correctly. And but yeah, so I'm going to use the template. I'm just going to do a couple small modifications. As I said, I'm pulling that bend that goes up to the fitting towards the outside of the axle back a little bit. I think that was it. I may move the other initial bend a little bit more as well, but I don't remember. But yeah, so I'm just going to rebuild this first line here. now that we finished this line, you can kind of see there on the table that the second line, that bend starts quite a bit earlier now. That's a great shot as well. So I'm just going to cut it down and then put the end on it. I'm not going to lie, at this point in time, I am very pleased with myself on this first line. It looks phenomenal. For the first line I've properly bent in, I don't know, ever, I think this just looks remarkably good. And yeah, as I say, I am super pumped by it. So yeah, so now we can get started on the other side. And I'm really happy that I'm using that old Nycop line there. And the thing is, like, that Nycop is really malleable. Apparently it's supposed to be good, and you know what? It did what I needed it to do initially. So I think it's just fine. It's really good for doing templating because it's super soft, and you know, I can use that same piece. I can just go straighten it back out, and you know, it comes out pretty straight, no kinks. So that's what I just did. I just straightened that out. So now I'm kind of figuring out how I'm going to do this next piece. So I get some measurements, and you know, I bend up the first bend, and I'm looking at this, and I just quickly bend up the second one, just kind of get it straightened out a little bit and figure it out. Just gonna head back over to the bench and re-straighten that piece out, and you know, figure out somewhere else to bend this. So at this point, at this bend, I'm looking at this, and I am not liking the look of this line coming off of the fitting. It's just super long. In my mind, the angles don't work with the diff. It's quite ugly to me in my mind. Would it work? Yes. Is it aesthetically pleasing to my eye? No, I think this is the ugliest thing in the world, which is why I'm so glad that I did this with this, you know, effectively scrap line first, because I can do this, look at it, you know, tell myself how ugly it is and how bad I am, and you know, how I should feel bad for making that decision to do that in the first place. But that's why I'm doing this test piece, right? Like it's sometimes you just got to do it once to know how not to do it. And I certainly did it once and realized that's not how I want to do it. So, you know, straighten out the test piece and redo the, you know, bends. Not a big deal with, you know, with the test piece. And so what I've done is I've brought that initial bend closer to the diff. So now that initial bend kind of follows the curve of the diff quite a bit more. I like it a lot better. But what that does mean that I need to do is I now need to have that line dip down to the axle tube. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do a second bend, a little bit outboard of the diff housing, just so that that drops down to the tube. And then I'll have to do a third set of bends to get it up into the fitting on the outside of the axle. So this side is even more complex than the first side, and I already had trouble with the first side when I forgot to have the fitting in the right place. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, so that's what it's going to look like. I'm pretty happy with this. I think it's looking great. The Nycop's all wavy just because, I've bent it a bunch before and I straightened it out, and it's not perfect, and that's fine. But this gives me a really good idea and representation of what I want. So now that I have my template, I'm going to do what I did before and just trying to transfer that template over to the stainless. So I'll get a chunk cut off, straightened out, and I'll bend it up to what I had for that template. Okay, since that second set of bends is done, the tube is now on the axle housing, or axle tube. Now what I need to do is I need to do the bend off of the axle tube up to the fitting towards the outboard of the axle housing, or outboard of the tube there. And what I'm doing is I want to make the bends the same distance after the shock brackets. And that way, when you look at it, they'll, be bent up at the same place. So when I measured how far off of the brackets my mark was, I noticed that on the side that I'm working on now, the bend would have started in a completely different spot. So here I am measuring out, and when I was welding these brackets on initially, I welded one on in the wrong place. I guess I welded it on the wrong side of the mark I had made. So now I'm just going to cut this side off, and then I will re-weld it back on, because it being off like that, I can't let that stand. That's just not acceptable to me, and anyone looking at this diff wouldn't know that it was off, but I would know. And, it's really not that hard to do. A couple of cuts with the die grinder, a little bit of weld on the housing to fill in where I cut into the axle tube, and then, just re-TIG welding on the bracket. I'm okay with this, delay and making this the same on both sides. Totally okay to me. All right, now that we took that little detour, we can get back to bending this brake line. So now that the bracket's in the right place, I can take a measurement from the bracket, transfer that onto the tube, and then bend it up in the same way as I did the other one. and it'll look way, way better. Alright, here we go. Second finished brake line. Attaching it, and I've shown pictures of this on my Instagram, so if you haven't seen my Instagram, you should check it out. It's the Annihilator Racing, same as the YouTube channel. And I am just infatuated with these brake lines for, not doing any sort of pipe or bending work really before. I am so overcome with joy with how well this turned out. I can't be any happier. It's just everything's almost perfect. Actually, it's not almost, it is perfect. This is perfect, and these brake lines look so good. I'm just so happy. We're just gonna do a little bit of cleanup here. Alright, now that we've got the breather and the lines on, we can pull it all right back off. And the reason why we're going to do that is we're going to start working on cleaning this up because I want to paint this diff. So pull the brake lines off, and then I will degrease it. Scuff it a little bit with a green scrubby pad just to kind of get all the dirt and grease out of it. I don't really want to be painting on something that's greasy and dirty, so I'm just going to do my best to clean it all up. Now that we got this all clean, my next thought was, great, we can start working on painting this. But then I looked at that lower control arm bracket and I remembered, no, I cannot start painting this yet. Before I paint this, I should really get that bracket straightened out. And so what happened is, when that diff was being shipped to me, one of the forklift drivers tagged it and bent the crap out of it. So a couple of the holes don't even work, so you can't even really put a control arm in there. So what I'm going to do is, previously I'd heated that up and tried using a crescent wrench to straighten it out, and that just really didn't work all that well. Also, the tanks that I had on my torch were really small, so I didn't get that much burn time out of them. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a little bit of square tube, and I'm going to take a little 1/8" plate, and I'm just going to make a little wedge. Although, you know, a wedge is generally a triangular shape. I don't know. I guess it's just a box, whatever. I'm going to make a box that's the correct width of the control arm. And then I'm going to heat up the one side with a torch, get it red hot. And I'm going to pound that box that I'm making right now into it. And what that's going to do is that's going to bend the outside plates away, or bend them out, because right now they're all pushed in, so you can't get anything in. If they were, you know, a little too wide, that'd be okay, but yeah, they're pushed in, so you can't get a control arm in there. So I'm going to wedge this piece of metal in between it, and since I'm only heating one side and leaving the other side cold, the hot side is the one that's going to move. So I'm going to heat up the side that I need to move, make it red hot, pound this you know, box in there, this piece of square tube with 1/8" ends on it, pound that in there, and then I'm going to end up heating up the plate again with that jammed in there, and then forming the bracket to the width of the part that I'm making. And that is what we're gonna do, and it actually works excellently. I am super happy with how it turned out. Alright, so as you can see, I'm doing some measuring. I'm making sure that I did get this to the correct dimensions, and it looks so much better. You know, the measurements are great. I'm not worried about this not working anymore, so what I can do is I can start prepping this for paint. And so what I'm going to do to start prepping this for paint is I need to start taping off different parts of this. So I'm going to put a little more paper towel in the diff, because I really want any oil to be absorbed by those paper towels. I don't want it leaking out at any point in time during the process. And then I'm just going to put a bunch of tape over everything, and what I'll do is I'll take a hammer around the outside, and that'll help me kind of peel away the excess tape from the cover, or from the housing. And then I'm going to put a temporary fitting in where the breather goes, because I don't want, you know, a bunch of paint getting in that hole. And then I'll just tape it off, and then stuff some paper towel in the ends, because I don't want to get a lot of paint on the bearing ends. And I might go back and actually just put some tape in there just to kind of help that out as well. But yeah, so that is what we're going to do. We're just going to tape everything off and make it all closed off, so when I paint this, it doesn't overspray the parts that I don't want painted. Now that everything's all prepped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plastic and I'm going to start covering some stuff, namely the car, my rims, things that are directly what I would consider to be in the line of spray. I'm going to cover all of the stuff on the shelves behind me to an extent, and then cover the door and some of the holes in the wall. Because when you're spraying this stuff, yeah, it stinks pretty bad. It's, you know, it's big chemical smell and kind of really sucks. So I don't want any of that getting into the house if I can avoid it, especially since I'm going to be painting all day. So yeah, I'm just going to throw some of this plastic up and get ready to paint. Now, unfortunately, after I get this up, I actually started to feel pretty sick, and I was out of commission for a couple of days, so I didn't end up getting having the ability to paint this in this video, which is unfortunate, but hopefully in the next one, it'll all be painted. All right, well, folks, with the last of this being taped up, that is all the time that we have for today. So, as always, if you've stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.